It's Overreaction Tuesday on Locked On Bucks. Khris Middleton's back in the lineup, so is he heading for the Hall of Fame? And the Bucks scored 150 points in this game. So are they a top 5 offense? I think in the end, they beat the Detroit Pistons. But we're going to talk about it because it's the first time the Bucks were healthy all season long. What does that mean? And what about Bojan Bogdanovic? Was this man trying to ball out to impress the Milwaukee Bucks? Let's discuss all this and more.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also from my work over at ESPN. And alongside me, the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden, for today's episode that is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. We'll have a bit more on that later on. But also, we thank everyone for making Locked On Bucks your first listen or first watch of every day. And everyone was a little excited yesterday, Frank. Khris Middleton was probable to play. He played 15 minutes tonight. So I'm sure everyone, if you're a Bucks fan, at least at the bare minimum, seeing this man out on the court is a nice relief, along with all the other better players as well. They only played the Detroit Pistons. But either way, if you are listening to Locked On Bucks now and you're feeling a little optimistic as a Bucks fan, you may as well continue that optimism and subscribe to Locked On Bucks wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. Hit the notifications and you'll know when we've got a new show. 150 to 130 is the final in Detroit, Frank. Interesting scoreline here. The Bucks were healthy. They did score 49 points in the first quarter. They hit another 23 threes. So the Bucks all of a sudden in January have gone from just an abysmal three-point shooting team to now seemingly one of the best in the league. So I'm not sure what to make of that, but the Detroit Pistons weren't exactly heavily invested in defending this team today. But nonetheless, you got all the guys back. The Bucks haven't had a win like this in a long time where they dominate really from start to finish. So you got to be at least happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, you and Justin, kind of headlined with the Khris return, but I mean, Khris and Giannis. Remember Giannis? I think it'd been almost 2 weeks since he last played. So to see both of them on the floor at the same time, and Drew Holiday obviously has been having to hold down the fort with them gone. Nice to have Drew actually get a little bit of help. Our hopeful all-star Drew Holiday. But yeah, I mean, again, this game was, basically out of control from a Pistons standpoint from almost the word go. Was it 37 to like 10 at one point? Am I making that up? Yeah, I mean, when Giannis hits the 2 threes, it kind of was like, all right, sorry, Pistons, like this is just going to be one of those nights. So yeah, I mean, I don't think, there's a lot to take away from, tactically what the Bucks didn't do, or whatever it might have been from today's game. But I mean, just getting your best 3 players back on the court, and as you have been quick to point out, yes, the big 3 have played now with Joe Ingles. So it was nice to get everybody back. Unfortunately, Bobby left the game in the second half with, I guess it was termed right knee soreness. Looked like he turned his ankle coming down on a rebound situation. I know he said after the game that he said I believe he said he'd be all right, which, that could mean he'll be back in a week or something. Who knows, right? With the way ankle/joint injuries go, fingers crossed he's fine, because obviously, I guess technically the only person who's missing right now is Serge Ibaka, the team chef, who is, away from the team and wants to go someplace else. So if Bobby Portis was injured for any period, that would be the one opportunity for Serge to actually get some minutes, but apparently that's not in the cards. So fingers crossed for Bobby. But yeah, just fun to see this team kind of clicking on all cylinders, and especially offensively. I mean, 49 points in the first quarter, just every shot seeming to go down. And as you pointed out, I think Justin had the stat that he tweeted out that the Bucks have hit 193s, I think, in the last 10 games. And I believe that's like the 4th most, I think he said, in NBA history over a 10-game span. So, yeah.
They can just settle in the middle if they want. They don't need to be, because I don't want to get back down to the bottom end of the cliff again.
I mean, probably no coincidence that would come with Giannis hurt, because they've had to be like just totally dependent on 3-point shooting when Giannis has been out. But hey, if they can keep the 3-point shooting going now that Giannis is back, that would be even better. You mentioned Giannis lacing his first 2 threes tonight, and Khris Middleton also hit his first 3 tonight and hit a couple on the evening. So that was nice to see. Khris also had a drive and a lefty finish for his 8 points. But I think he admitted 6 turnovers. He definitely had some rust in terms of his floor game. Did have 4 assists. There was that run. Man, just that one play where Khris did had a pick and roll and fed it to Giannis in the middle, and Giannis just immediately was able to go up for a layup. It was like, that's the kind of stuff we've been missing. But yeah, it's just it's kind of frustrating, right? Because it's like his first game back this season against the Lakers maybe was his best game of the season. He had, I think, 1 or 2 other games that were maybe close to that. But again, this stuff is not linear, and for me, obviously, I think we want to see Khris looking like the old Khris Middleton. That's the main thing that we care about at this point. But especially in the regular season, right? It's about consistency and just, again, night to night, feeling like he's in shape. He's, feeling fit, not worrying about him getting stretched out minutes wise. Obviously tonight didn't have to play all that much. But again, and honestly, I know you guys were talking yesterday about, why they would have him return in this game rather than sit out another game or whatever it might be, or bring him back on Saturday when we originally thought he was going to be back. And probably against Detroit, maybe they kind of looked at it and just said, hey, this is kind of a little bit easier way to kind of ramp them up, right? It's basically like a preseason type atmosphere almost, especially with a lot of the injuries that the Pistons have. So mission accomplished in that regard. Hopefully they build a little confidence today, get everybody back on the floor. Fingers crossed Bobby is not going to be out now. And yeah, I mean, you got the Nuggets coming into Milwaukee on Wednesday, right? So if you needed a tune-up, this is what you got tonight, but certainly no tune-up on Wednesday against a team the caliber of the Nuggets. So yeah, job done. 150 points. Feel like we've had a lot of these explosions lately, came with these with the 3-point shooting, but just good to see the Milwaukee Bucks. Just good to see the actual Milwaukee Bucks on the floor for a change. That was a very nice change of pace relative to kind of the more limited version of group that we've been seeing lately.
Yeah, Middleton played the 15 minutes, and I am curious whether it was more the state of the game, whether they would have tried to push him a little bit more, but maybe not. It seems, and we go off the reports we have. Obviously, Eric spoke to Khris Middleton a week or so ago. Zora had some stuff tonight on the broadcast, but it does seem like, yes, he's back, but I'll personally feel a little more comfortable if he's not on the injury report for this Denver game, or this knee doesn't swell up after this 15 minutes against Detroit. So it still kind of does feel like, okay, Khris is back. This is great. Let's hope he's fine tomorrow. I did see someone tweet that, and this is purely Twitter content stuff here, but I did see someone tweet that, gee, Khris is looking slim. And I know we always do this. I don't know. I have no comments on the weight of Khris Middleton or the work he's been able to do. But Zora did say in the broadcast, one of the things over the course of the last month, even though he hasn't been playing, he's been working out, throughout. Obviously limited at the start as they were dealing with the swelling and stuff, but you get the sense that he's been able to put in a fair bit of work over this month. So yeah, maybe a little bit of rust tonight. Or maybe he was just fitting in with the group. He said, hey, you guys turn the ball over all the time. I'm just going to come in and try and fit in like a glove with my 6 turnovers. They had 18 overall tonight. I want to ask you about some lineup stuff, though, with this team. As you said, not a lot of takeaways from this game tonight, but more big picture stuff after we talk about our friends over at FanDuel. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On, because they're the number one sports book in America. That's FanDuel, of course. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets, from the money line to point spreads to player props. And if you want to get a little bit adventurous there, you can dive into a same game parlay. How about this line that I was just looking at? LeBron James, I think he's around 220 points away from passing Kareem, the all-time score in total. If you want to predict what game he's going to get that done, you can do so. And it's kind of interesting if you're a Bucks fan. The favorite here in terms of the odds is at Staples Center, or crypto, versus the Oklahoma City Thunder on the 7th of Feb, plus 130. But if you think he's not going to get it there, the Bucks are in town. I don't really want to see them be a part of history, although some people have said, well, Kareem played for Milwaukee, he also played for the Lakers. Maybe this is convenient. I think it's a national TV game. Plus 230 that LeBron gets the job done on February 9th against the Bucks there. So you can check that out, plus championship odds and everything else at FanDuel.com. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports partner of Locked On. All right, as far as some of this lineup stuff tonight, because we've briefly touched on the idea that because we haven't seen all these guys together, and yes, I'm throwing Joe Ingles in the mix, you think at least with the Bucks, as we've said, they don't really have a traditional point guard. They're going to have minimum 2 guys that can create some offense on the floor at every moment, or they should be able to. If you have Giannis, Khris, Drew Holiday, and Joe Ingles. Tonight we saw actually more than I expected of all 4 on the floor, sometimes with Bobby Portis, sometimes with Brook Lopez, and we'll see what happens with Bobby, as you pointed to. But how do you think the Bucks ultimately, because you think that they're going to shorten this rotation a little bit. They ended up playing 10 guys in the first quarter tonight with War getting some minutes. Javon Carter ended up hitting 6 threes, but he played plenty as well. It was a weird game. How do you think they mix this together if everyone's healthy, which obviously we hope they are? Because I think there's some thought that all those 4 guys can play together and then you either go big or small. But I think being able to stagger those guys also makes some sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. I had the same reaction when I saw Jordan Nwora. I was like, wait, aren't the Bucks fully healthy? Why is Jordan Nwora playing in the first quarter of this game? And obviously, whatever, the score and the situation may have been part of it. But I mean, he still played, right? We eventually saw Wes Matthews and Marjon Beauchamp. We saw a little bit of AJ Green at the very end as well. So we did see those guys. But, I think in terms of, who plays, I mean, the big question I think is obviously, is Grayson Allen going to be on this team past the trade deadline? But I think if you just sort of take this team as it stands right now, and we kind of just do the math on, who are the guys that we'd expect to play most, if not every night. Obviously now we can finally say Khris Middleton. Well, obviously he didn't start tonight, right? We'll see. Does he start on Wednesday? I mean, part of me is like, I don't know. I mean, philosophically, like if even if you're not going to play him a ton of minutes, like part of me is like, just start him, and if you need to pull him early, just pull him early. If you have him on a minutes limit, but I think if we assume at least for now Grayson Allen is the starter, I've obviously made my comments about how I would probably just go with Pat Connaughton as the other starter, in part just because of sort of the playoff, like who would you want to see starting / closing in the playoffs? Like, okay, then let's just get that group the most reps possible. But either way, Grayson, Pat, whatever, however you want to kind of sequence those guys, that's 6. Bobby Portis, obviously 7. Joe Ingles, we know, they're going to do everything they can to get him minutes. He's going to be a fixture in the rotation as well. He's 8. And then I think, from a point guard perspective, I don't know. I feel like George Hill has been as good as Javon Carter sort of over this recent spell when Hill's actually played. But again, we saw, I think, evidence tonight. George Hill DNPs. I don't think he was on the injury report. George DNPs. Javon plays and shoots the lights out. So shout out to Javon for hitting 6 out of 8 threes. It certainly seems like Bud's preference was going to be to play Javon Carter over George Hill as the backup point guard. So that gets you to 9 guys right there. And, I think in the playoffs, you're probably not going to play more than 9 guys unless, again, there's foul trouble or it's a blowout or something like that, right? I mean, Bud, as much as people talk about Bud playing lots of guys in the playoffs, he has eventually kind of always gotten down to only playing kind of his best players. And he typically hasn't had, like 11 guys that he really wants to play, unfortunately, due to injuries and some other things. So yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the 9. And I think, notably, I didn't call out Wes Matthews, who obviously I, generally think can still play. It was nice to see Wes come in late, hit a couple threes. I still think he's a guy that I would trust, at least off the bench, in certain matchups in particular, especially if you have to play a team like Boston, and you just need kind of wing size because certainly you look at just the guys that you have coming off the bench, as of right now, and we'll see if things change here with some of the trade discussions going on. Like I said, I trust Pat defensively, but certainly, most of the other guys are talking about coming off the bench. Javon, obviously a defensive player, but he's small. Joe Ingles, obviously a smart player defensively, but has his physical limitations. Bobby Portis, obviously, very much has his limitations defensively. So yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, again, you just hope that this team can stay healthy for the most part moving forward, and you'll have regular random knocks and things like that. Guys are going to be out, right? For random things like that, or resting, blah, blah, blah. But you just hope that you avoid kind of the major injuries and those types of things that obviously so far the Bucks have not been able to avoid. So I've probably already jinxed it, Kane. So sorry, Bucks Nation. But yeah, I think that's at least that seems to be what the 9 is. And part of me, again, depending on what happens at trade deadline, part of me is still just like waiting for Bud to be like, oh yeah, just kidding. I'm actually gonna play Wes some real minutes at some point. But I mean, if he hasn't, he hasn't been playing over like AJ Green and Jordan Nwora. So I don't know, right? Once we get past the trade deadline, that'll probably tell us a lot, just because guys like Nwora, obviously Grayson Allen, potentially George Hill, Serge Ibaka, which doesn't really change anything. All those guys, could be used, if for nothing else, salary matching in a potential trade. I think we heard discussions that we heard. I don't know, I can't remember if we talked about it, but Mark Stein mentioned that there had been the Bucks throwing their 4 second-round pick platter on the table and matching salary for Eric Gordon. In Houston, there was, I believe, some discussion today from Jake Fisher that a potential 3-team deal involving Rui Hachimura going to Phoenix, Jake Carter coming to Milwaukee, and 3 second-round picks going out from the Bucks. That helped set the price for Hachimura eventually going to the Lakers for 3 second-round picks. So we know the Bucks are continuing to try to do stuff. We heard references of Grayson Allen being in demand from the Knicks. So we'll see. I think I certainly expect there will be some move by the trade deadline. But for now, hey, it's nice to. What is the trade? Is the trade deadline 2 weeks away? Something like that. It's nice. Hey, at least we'll get like a tiny little teeny weeny sample maybe of the Bucks getting their opening. The team that they put together in the summer. We may actually get to see them a little bit before somebody gets traded at the trade deadline. But in the meantime, that's just the nature of the NBA. And I know we've been waiting forever, it feels like, to see this group together. And now obviously you just cross your fingers that they can stay healthy. And, if there is upheaval, that it's a move that, kind of covers up maybe some of the remaining weaknesses in the roster. But by getting Khris Middleton back, and hopefully the real Khris Middleton, that certainly cures a lot of the problems that we've been talking about all season with this team.
Certainly does. We actually, and by the way, I feel a little bit, I feel for Grayson Allen. I don't know what's going to happen with him, but he's very aware, I'm sure, that he's been the guy that's been in all these trade rumors. I assume he would rather play for the Bucks than the Knicks, but whatever happens on Fed 9, at least there might be some relief for him. He'll at least know where he's going. But I have to imagine it's hard to play when you're in all these rumors, as he has been for the last couple of months. We also saw a couple of decent dunks from Marjon Beauchamp. It was the definition of garbage time. But he's got that athleticism that not too many on the Bucks do have. So that was at least fun. From the Pistons now. We love Lisa Byington. It sounded like she was getting a little bit stressed about the 25-point margin at one point in time. Now, in Lisa's defense, we have seen the Bucks cough up some leads in recent weeks. So I'm not saying that this was unfounded from Lisa, but part of the reason for the Pistons at least keeping the game at around 20 to 25 points was Bojan Bogdanovic. Now, they were talking about his motivations for playing so well, and certainly recently knocking down a bunch of threes. He was 11 for 15 from 3, 11 for 15 from the field, 6 for 7 from 3, had 33 points. probably not going to be on the Pistons. That's what we suspect. It seems like they might be asking for a price that might be a little bit too exorbitant from the Milwaukee Bucks, but he's an easy shooter. He can knock them down. If the Bucks could add him some way and have him coming off the bench, I'd be feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. And he played with Brook Lopez, and I thought the same thing the last time the Bucks played the Pistons. Like he is not afraid of Brook Lopez, and you don't think of Bojan Bogdanovic as being athletic, but maybe it's just because they practiced, played together back in the day for a couple of years. But yeah, you just feel like he knows how to attack Brook, and obviously we know what kind of shooter he is as well. He had just another great game tonight. Had a pretty chippy shoulder barge on Giannis that was called a flagrant. It was both a flagrant and a intentional take foul, which I've not seen that before. That maybe that's the first time in NBA history that you get an intentional take foul that's also a flagrant. So Grayson Allen got to shoot it because you can pick who shoots a take foul shot, and he got to take two, and then they got to keep the ball. So a little bit of random trivia that we got to see tonight. But yeah, he was very good tonight again. I mean, he's obviously a guy that when he gets going offensively can be fun to watch. And yeah, I mean, if you can somehow take that some combination of guys to make a deal work, that's great. But I think I've mentioned in the past here, he's unique because he's at right around I think 19.5 million. And so I think like one of the typical sort of packages that you would throw out the Bucks using on him is like I think basically the group that you would use to get Eric Gordon, which I haven't done the trade machine yet today, but I think when I looked at this previously, right, you'd say Grayson Allen, George Hill, Jordan Nwora, and like Serge Ibaka, right? I believe that group, if I remember correctly, adds up to only about like 15 million, which I think leaves you like $100,000 or $200,000 shy of being able to match salaries for Bojan Bogdanovic. So, whatever. Bottom line is, it's very hard to kind of aggregate enough salary together to make a move for a guy like that. And the other piece too is it's just, it's one thing in the summers when teams have a bunch of roster spots to make these like very lopsided trades, but to do it in season, I mean, you'd have to, the Pistons, if they're going to take back 3 more dudes than they're sending out, or 4 more, like for that matter, like you got to waive a bunch of guys. Like, you can't keep all these dudes, right? Or you can't just, you can't just say like, just keep those guys. No, you have to waive guys in order to bring in that salary. So again, like I just don't think like logistically you're going to see the Bucks pull off a trade like that where they're sending 4 or 5 guys out and you're bringing in like a $19 million player. It's just really hard to do. And I mean, again, like, hey, if John Horst can conjure up a way to bring in Bojan Bogdanovic without giving up, the 2029 first round pick, I mean, you just added a super talented scorer who, I mean, coming off the bench would be a huge luxury to have, right? Talk about like, Khris Middleton insurance if Khris were to get hurt again or something like that. I mean, he's going to be 35 soon, so I would caution against looking at him as like you can trade Khris Middleton, you can get rid of Khris Middleton now. It's like, well, Khris is 31, Bojan Bogdanovic is 34 going on 35. It's they're like in terms of building around Giannis Antetokounmpo, like Bojan Bogdanovic is not exactly the ideal piece, but if he were a guy coming off the bench, like, well, that would be a great luxury to have. But again, it's just, I think it's a really tough move to make, and certainly at least the signals being given out from Detroit. And again, things change quickly. At least for now, like the Pistons are playing this whole like, oh, we need a king's ransom to move Bojan Bogdanovic. He's under contract for a couple more years, and we love the way he fits with our younger, blah 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 blah, right? Like, okay, we'll see if they really feel that way when push comes to shove. I mean, they're terrible even with Bojan, so they may not need to move him to be in the, to make a strong pull for Victor Wembanyama, but who knows? And I think the same goes for Alec Burks. Some of the intel that's going around is that the Pistons are also not, looking to trade Alec Burks, which is weirder to me because it's like, what are you guys doing with that? What are you guys doing with Alec Burks, right? So Alec Burks, by the way, who stunk tonight, but has generally been very good this year, and honestly been a solid wing scorer and a little bit of do everything the last couple of years, including some decent time with the Knicks as well. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really buy why the Pistons would be hanging on for dear life and driving a super hard bargain on Bogdanovic or Burks for that matter. I mean, they got Bogdanovic for what, a second round pick and Kelly Olynyk, I think. So it's not like they've sunk a bunch of assets into him and they have to save face. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's some team willing to give them a protected first round pick for Bogdanovic, which, you can turn him around 6 months after you get him for basically turn a second round pick into a first round pick. Like, that's pretty nice business for a team that obviously is still building for the long term. So I don't know. We'll see what the Pistons do, but certainly they're a team to watch given some, Bogdanovic principally, but also Burks and, other potential moving pieces that they have, which could be of use on teams that are actually trying to win ball games.
Very difficult to get it done, as you pointed to. But not only did he play with Brook, but he played with Joe Ingles. So they might be petitioning, say, hey, Horsty, make it happen. He's a good guy. He'll fit in this locker room. So we'll see.
I think after the game, it was, I think I saw George Hill, Joe Ingles, and Alec Burks all talking because those three also played together. So I guess at some point, Bogdanovic, Burks, George Hill, Joe Ingles, and I'm wondering if Grayson Allen overlapped during that Utah period too. So yeah, a lot of Jazz connections in this game tonight for sure.
Yeah, maybe Joe. Now, Joe's a very smart man. Maybe he said to Alec, listen, we're going to trade for you. Make sure you don't hit a shot tonight. We want to keep that price low. See you in a couple weeks. Maybe that was the play that they went for. One other story we did hear from this game. Now, we hear that, Mike Budenholzer, he's a player's coach. He lets these guys do things away from basketball. Obviously, given the NBA schedule, there's not a lot of practice time as it is. But when you only have one day off between games, and they're both games on the road, and they're both in pretty similar cities, Cleveland and Detroit, sneaking down to Florida in a 24-hour period in between to go to Disney, I believe I heard that right, that Brook Lopez snuck down. They're shutting Splash Mountain or something like that. And so Brook Lopez went down to Disney and went on the ride 6 times, which I don't know exactly what Splash Mountain is, but I think you're in a boat and you go down the thing, right? Is that down a huge?
Yeah, I think I did. I think I've gone on it at some point when I was younger. The quote from Brook was that it is definitely tough for me. I'm disappointed losing his namesake attraction. But yeah, I mean, I'm seeing some pictures here of him holding the NBA, the Larry O'Brien trophy at Splash Mountain. So yeah, I don't know. Shout out to Brook though. Apparently it closed on January 23rd, so a very trying time in the Lopez household these days. But I don't know. I thought I heard some mention of that, but I didn't really catch the specifics of it. So hey, yeah. Brook, if Brook is going down for that, I don't know. I mean, that's like a death in the family, I guess, for him. Hopefully, they got the private jet to take him up and back. I can't imagine Brook is flying at 7 feet in commercial, but
with his Mickey ears on.
Yeah, with his Disney ears on. So shout out to Brook, but I mean, he didn't miss a beat. 21 points tonight on 8 out of 12 shooting. So if you do that, you can do whatever the hell you want on your off days, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. And if that's the ride. I guess if you're a 7-footer, like fitting in those little carriages can be like challenging at times, and you get tossed around a little bit. Like it's probably not the smoothest ride, the old Splash Mountain. So going on there 6 times, less than a year after back surgery, he's obviously feeling pretty fit. But
here's the question: they were just in Miami for like 4 days or something, right? Like, could he not have like gone up to Disney? I mean, I know he's got a house there. Like,
well, I think he wanted to be there he wanted to be one of the last people to ride it.
Okay. So you think he went back up to Disney when he was in Florida a couple weeks ago, and then he had to go back again today?
Yeah.
Man. All right. Hey, I love the Lopez twins, so I won't press it too much, but um, you do you, Brook. You do you.
Yeah, no doubt. And shout out to both Lopez brothers. Hopefully they're doing well at this difficult time. Make sure you check out the Game to Game podcast on your Locked On NBA feed as well. Get a recap of all the games across the NBA from the local experts. Will give you a little 60-second wrap of what happened in each game on the night's NBA. So it's a nice little way to catch up with all the games. You can get that on your Locked On NBA feed. That's Game to Game. Anything else, Frank?
I mean, you mentioned briefly the Marjon Beauchamp cameo at the end. Fun to see him throw it on a couple dunks. Again, not the situation. Let's just say that I think everybody was getting buckets against the Detroit Pistons tonight. But the first one, he misses a three. I think gets the ball back. I think it was Jordan Nwora who actually gave him a nice pass, if I remember correctly, where he elevated on the baseline for a nice dunk off 2 feet. Again, really would like to see Marjon get more dunks off 1 foot. Feel like that's a little bit more effective in transition. But the second one, also off 2 feet, was pretty fun too in transition. Thanasis looking like a Greek Magic Johnson, leading the break, little look away, and then delivering the ball right in the well, not the shooter's pocket, the dunker's pocket, I guess, for Marjon to elevate and dunk. So yeah, shout out to the Rook. Not letting his head get down. He had a nice little step back three as well, which was fun. So again, we'll see. We'll see what this means, especially with Khris now back. And you kind of anticipate there's probably not going to be a whole lot of playing time for the young guys. But again, I mean, if Wes Matthews is on the outs of the rotation and Jordan Nwora is getting first quarter minutes, then maybe there are still minutes to be won here in kind of on the wing rotation. So, I mean, come on, bud. Jordan Nwora hasn't been that good lately. Like, throw the rookie a bone here. Give him a little bit of a look, but we'll see. Obviously, much can potentially change with some of those back of the roster spots, given the trade line is drawing near. Have you heard any other? Were there any other kind of like real reports that were floating around that you can recall trade wise that bear mentioning? I think we heard the Knicks being interested in Grayson Allen, which I made the comment like I definitely don't think Cam Reddish is like good value for Grayson Allen, because Grayson Allen's like a good NBA player, and Cam Reddish is just kind of like, he looks like he should be a good NBA player, but he just like hasn't been. So hopefully you wouldn't actually need to give him up. I think Michael Scotto from The Athletic mentioned that there were basically scenarios potentially out there for the Bucks acquiring Cam Reddish without having to include Grayson Allen, which, hey, if it's Jordan Nwora and Serge Ibaka, like, fine, like I don't think Cam Reddish is good, but physically he profiles well and he's still young, and if you want to just basically take a flyer on a guy without giving up a rotation piece, I'd be fine with that. But I think other than that, we just continue to hear, again, just indications of interest in Jay Crowder, but it also doesn't seem like the Bucks are going to give up a whole lot for him, but who knows.
Yeah, we'll see. The Crowder one is genuinely going to be interesting to see where, if anywhere, he ends up. I mean, I assume he goes somewhere, but we just haven't heard or seen anything. The Phoenix Suns obviously have been through a rough patch and probably could have used him with some of the guys they've had out of the lineup as well. So we'll see what happens. 7 games to go before the deadline by my count, February 9. I'm sure we'll do more trade pods before then and hopefully get some juicy rumors to at least break down on the podcast. But we'll be back tomorrow. And as you pointed to, Nuggets come into town. Jokic, Giannis, a little MVP marker game, perhaps. We'll see what happens in that one. I, for some reason, seem to remember the Nuggets coming to Milwaukee and having a fair bit of success and hitting a whole bunch of threes in recent years. So we'll see what the Bucks can do.
Last year was bad. They tried to like double Jokic, and it was just ugly. By the way, in Jim Ozarski's story about Brook Lopez and Splash Mountain, he cites Robin and Brook wrote it, quote unquote, like 18 times in a row from 2 to 4 a.m. during a 24-hour Days of Disneyland event in Anaheim. So, because there's a version of the ride in both California and Orlando. So that's intense. I don't know that there's any Disney ride that I would want to do 18 times, but
No.
at least he wasn't waiting in line, right? Just one back to back to back to back to back to back.
I wonder how excited they get by the 18th time. Like, are they like screaming, yelling?
I don't know.
Anyway, shout out to the Lopez brothers. They love it. All right, we'll podcast tomorrow in the lead up to this Nuggets game and see if any other news comes out overnight. But until then, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We really appreciate it. Drop your comments in the YouTube feed. What do you think of the Bucks getting back to full health for this game against the Detroit Pistons tonight? And then we'll catch you all tomorrow with another Locked On Bucks.